I want to now do a module called state management. And what I'd like to do to begin, just for fun, is I'd like you to get with a partner. This time you don't have to go to the back of the room. That was kind of fun. This room is just perfect. We had lots of room to do that. Just like somebody you're sitting next to, or you can move chairs a little bit if you like. But I want to challenge you a little bit. Would you discuss a real problem that is challenging? And I'm only going to ask you to discuss it for 5 hours. No, I'm just kidding. And get out the sandpaper. No, just for like literally about a minute, like very briefly. But would you really address a real problem? Notice that if you're sitting next to each other, so you're already aligned, or unless you turn your chairs to be in conflicting position, which you might be more comfortable with. If it may be a default position, that is still okay. But the idea is our general rule is right. Okay. So please get with a person. You can get with anyone you know or that you don't know as well in the room. This would be even more powerful if it's someone you know less well. Like if you get somebody that you work with every day, please get someone you don't know or know the least, because I know you all kind of know each other, and discuss a real problem, decide what it is, and for like 60 seconds, then I'll clap my hands, then please go ahead and return to your seat, and then I want to work with that, and this is our first frame. So when you're ready, please get a partner. 1 minute, discuss a real, something difficult. John? No, just both of you discuss it for 1 minute. Right, one problem, one issue. Okay, one issue. Yeah, any issue that's real, okay? Yeah.
But I call God. You're busy. Shoot.
I'm supposed to do that. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, please break your problem state. Okay, that's as miserable as you'll be today. Okay, I hope nobody had a traumatic experience. Everything's okay, all right? You're obviously more than capable of talking about a problem for a little bit. I want to give you that as a reference we're going to come back to. So this module is about state management. And so when we communicate, I mentioned this earlier, but I kind of did it in mentioning a lot of things. So one of the most amazing patterns is that really exquisite communicators will always enter into the most appropriate state for the communication that's coming up. And when I was modeling for another company, a land development company, they're doing about $150 million a year, I flew out to Boca Raton and we walked through the company. I happened to be with the CEO, and I watched him change states. We were going through it because we turned to where the sales team was staying. And he totally changed states, and he talked completely differently. And as we're walking down the hall, I went, you go into a different state when you talk to the sales team, don't you? He goes, yeah. I was like, wow. And it really made me aware of this. And of course, it's a pattern with great communicators. This is true. Your spouse, your kids. Here's the pattern I want to teach you. If you want to be a better communicator, you know now about rapport, how powerful it is to start using their map of the world. We have another module after lunch. I'm going to teach you more about how to recognize other people's map of the world. It's really fun to be able to recognize those things so you can use them. I'm going to teach you things you're going to recognize about your kids that you've never known before. I've literally been paid to coach. I coached a guy once, as an aside. He wanted to get his two kids. He had two kids. One wanted to go to college. He couldn't get his daughter to go to college. She didn't want to go. I did a little bit with this map of the world. He called 2 weeks later. He goes, my daughter's going to college. He got her to want to go. I was like, yeah, Well, because he used her map, not his. So I'm going to teach you some cool stuff when we come back. But for now, state management is really where it's at. When we communicate, the first step is to enter a state that is optimal for the communication, for what we're about to enter into beforehand. So why is state the first step? Why is state so important? And the answer to that is our performance in any given situation, including all of our communications, isn't determined by our talents, skills, or gifts, or even our training. How well you communicate and how well you just communicated in that interaction is not being determined by your skills, your God-given talents, or any of that. It's being determined by the state you're in. Why is that true? Because the state, the emotional state is what I mean, is what gives us access to our talents, God-given gifts and skills. If you take a genius, certified genius, and you put them in a tremendously unresourceful state, do you think they'll perform like a genius? No way. There's no peak performance anywhere in the world without a peak performance state. Every athlete does it. You can track it to a person. Can you imagine like 10 divers on diving platforms? They're all, have you ever seen the state they're in? They're folks, and there's one at the end going, yeah, let me get back. I'll call you back. I'm kind of big. Oops. I have fun with it, all right? That's not exactly a peak performance state, right? There's no peak performance without a peak performance state. Well, we're not going into a competition like that, but you get the idea. We cannot tap our God-given talents. Our state is what determines how well we do that. Which is why it's pretty dramatic for me to say, however we perform, it's not our talents that are determining it, it's our state. And if you want to perform extraordinarily well, you always want to enter into an extraordinary state. You know why baseball players do all they're famous, they spit and they do all that stuff? They're going through a ritual that puts them into an altered state. It may look stupid, it's silly, but right? So, this applies to everything: music, arts, sales, communicating with your kids, your doctor, everybody. So when I put you in to talk about that stuff, I didn't say, you were like in the state that we're here in today. I didn't give you a chance to create a state. So what I want to do now is, I want to help you create a state. So how do you know what state to enter into and create for communication? So here are 3 criteria I recommend. One is your outcome. What do you want? It's good to have the outcome in mind anyway. Great communicators communicate with an outcome in mind. So what's your outcome for the communication? Okay, does that make sense so far? Okay. So we want to create a state. We want to determine the intensity of the state. Remember when I talked earlier about a blended state for learning? When we first started, I said, a little curious is usually good. A little bit of focus, but you don't want to be like too much, and you want to be relaxed, right? And then kind of like open-minded, relaxed is open. And there's a certain amount of, you have to feel safe. right? To be a little vulnerable, to say, well, I don't know that, and to explore a little bit. I think most of you are in a great learning state, but it's kind of, notice it's a blended state of a few things. So blended states work really well. As a trainer, I have a blended state that I go into, and what it means is we kind of go in among 3 or 4 emotions that make us really resourceful in that situation. So, but also notice that in the curiosity, relaxation, etc., learning state, whichever state works best for you. If you have to set the intensity, right? If I'm in a learning state, if I'm too curious, I get impatient and frustrated because I want to know the answer too much, right? My curiosity has to be about, on a scale of 1 to 10, you could kind of adjust it for you, right? So we want to set the intensity. And the other thing, if you're going to do a meeting, you're going to make a sales call, it's what's your outcome? What's the intensity of the 2 or 3 states that will be most appropriate, right? Because that helps you achieve the outcome. And then the other really important one is, that I recommend is, protect your self-esteem. Okay? So your self-esteem, like what state lets you take care of yourself? Right? In any interaction, whatever state you want to be in, you want to kind of look after yourself that you feel good with, right? Okay, so these aren't the end-all be-all, but I learned these years ago. So what I want you to do now is, I want you to get with a different partner, not the person that you were talking about, that big issue, that problem that you want to challenge, you want to solve, okay, you want to work on. Please get with somebody else, and I want you to guys talk about the best state or blended state. I would stick to 3 or so, it's up to you. What are those emotions that if you were to enter them? By the way, I often ask this question. So if I was feeling this, I would be like this in the situation. If I was relaxed in this learning, in this seminar, yeah, how would I be? Well, if I was kind of too relaxed, I would be like, blotto. If I was like tense, so probably medium relaxed, that would let me be open and receptive. So if I'm medium relaxed, so just like that, I know, okay, about a medium relaxed, but not too much, because then I'll fall asleep, right? And see how we did that? So if I'm in this state, about this intensity, my action behaviors would be like this. If I'm curious, that's why my curiosity is usually a little above normal, but not so high that it's super intense, right? As I've mentioned. So I'm going to do like maybe a 6 or 7 on the, like I could put like a little, remember the old days when you had stereos? They had the little, what do they call those?
Equalizer.
Thank you, equalizer. So the equalizers, right? Remember, you could set like 1 to 10, And so I want you to get with a different partner and pick like 1 to 3 states that would be excellent for you to be resourceful, because I'm going to have you get back with that first partner, and now you're going to have a state and a couple other things, and I'm going to help you access the state to go, and you'll notice the difference, okay? This is a different way to go into any communication. This is what top communicators do. I mean, I've literally watched somebody running a $150 million a year company do it right in front of my very eyes, and I've read about it, trainers talk about it, with those who model top communicators, this is what they're doing. There's no lawyer that goes in and performs incredible in a court of law, and they're not in their lawyer mode in front of the court mode, right? They've got a state. I'm in my trainer state. I could describe to you what it is in detail. I've had a lot of years to work on. I'm still always perfecting it. I've already mentioned that it's faster or slower than normal? Faster. Louder or softer? So I'm a little bit like in a visual pace, but I'm also being super attentive. I have to get, because I want to know your response. If I start to see people going like this, yes, Alexander, no, I'm with you 100%. And there's an incongruent, the nonverbals that I know I need to give you a break, right? I want to get your feedback because your experiences means a lot to me. So it's a definite state, right? To be at my best I can be. So now you know why I teach, and I learned this, state is always the first step. Because no matter what you do, talking to your kids, discipline them, talking with your spouse, your friends, your family, your loved one, every colleague, every vendor you ever are in, it's your emotional states that's determining how well you function there, period. That's what this model says. I take it as true, but who knows? But I take it as true. And if you ever heard of a guy named Tony Robbins, he swears by this, right? Every audio is, ends with live with passion, right? Okay? State, man, state rules the day. So if you want to be a better communicator, you've got to alter your state. You have to start thinking about the state you need to be in, enter the state, and you're just going to be a different person. You'll be astonished what you can do in a different state. It will surprise you. In fact, that would be a goal I have for you. Go into a different state. In fact, hopefully you do it in this exercise. If you don't do it here, I can guarantee if you change the state you're in with prospects, right? We're talking you sales guys, with vendors and contractors, especially people that you struggle with. Maybe they have a map that's different from yours, so it's harder to slow down or whatever, right? Like I still challenging for me sometimes. Man, let me tell you when I really got this right. Years ago, I had an office in Denver. I had an executive, my first real office, I had 5 employees, had a new hire. 3 or 4 times I had gotten a gun in there to teach her our database, and she still couldn't get it. And one day, I was in my executive office. She's there. She's been there like 2 weeks. I start to walk out there, and I'm like really frustrated. I'm like, God, what's it going to take to get her to learn the database? And I stopped at the door, and I went, whoa, And if I go in here like this, I'm going to make her feel criticized. I'm going to make her feel like she's not good enough. She'll probably quit. And we had trained her. We'd hired her. And thank goodness, this is a story where I got it right, because I could tell you stories where I messed this up. I stopped and I went, oh, and I remember sitting down and I went, okay, what's my outcome? And I went, it wasn't actually, I wanted her to learn the database, but I wanted her to feel confident, and even more so, I wanted her to know I was confident of her. So I went, oh, I got it. It's like, I want her to feel like I got confidence in her. Like I've got confidence in her. So I went, okay. What it is instead of it was more like laid back, casual. I was like, oh, this feels better anyway. So I strolled out there and went, hey, great. And I mentioned a couple little things. I said, let's work on the ACT. ACT's our database. It's not a big database, but for a little company, it's pretty good. And I said, and by the way, don't worry. I know, I'm going to describe it a different way. And I know you'll get it. Like I literally said, I have confidence you'll get it. Let's go through it a little bit differently and you'll pick it up. And sure enough, she picked it up. She got it. And I walked to my office, and later that day, she goes, I got it. And she went through the whole thing, and it was done. And if I'm convinced, if I hadn't stopped and changed my state, I would have been, my frustration and everything would have just bowled her over, and she was probably, especially in the first 2 weeks, she was not sure of her position. I would have just wrecked that relationship. Now, I'm not going to tell you, because we don't have the time to tell the ones I messed it up, because I could tell you ones I really messed it up, and I didn't change my state, usually is the key. So would you get with a partner, figure out, decide what kind of state, 2 or 3, that would work for working on this issue, and what's the level of intensity based on your outcome, and make sure you protect your self-esteem. And take 2 minutes to do that. I'm going to give you maybe a minute each, because you each need to get one. Well, 2 minutes each, okay? Little time. I'll check in with you. And you guys know what to do? Please. Yeah? Okay, so here's what you do. Get with a different partner, not the one that you were talking the problem with, and come up with 1 to 3 emotions that you need to be in when you're in that. You're going to go back and talk to that original first person about the problem. Okay?
Come on, Joe.
Okay, guys, can I have your attention for just a second? Can I have your attention for just a second? So you're coming up with 1 or 2 or 3 emotions that will help you be more resourceful when you go back to talk to that person about the problem and difficult situation, right? And also you want to, if you can, it's an option, set the intensity level real simply like I did. Well, if I'm about this curious, that feels about right, because then I would be like this. But if I'm, like that, just a general intensity level. That's all you're really doing. Very simple. What emotions would make me resourceful, help me achieve my outcome, kind of take care of myself, and what's the other one? Right? What level do they need to be to help me do that? Okay, simple. You guys need a little more time, another minute?
Wouldn't you say that the level depends on the issue?
The criteria I recommend is what helps you be most resourceful to achieve your outcome. And it doesn't have to be like your ultimate end, maybe you want to create rapport at first, maybe. That's why a blended state is really helpful, and more natural. When we're at our best, we're generally alternating between a few emotional states. We know that from modeling people who are extraordinarily excellent at what they do. They're like, well, I'm like this, I'm like that. And they're like, we're rotating among 3 amazing states. So that's why we do it this way. So, right? So, yeah. Does that answer your question,
sorry.
Erica? That's all. I just want to be sure. Did I get it right? Okay. I checked her nonverbal. That's what I was doing. See? Okay. Keep using your half-second response, please. Okay. You can get 10 times more information. Sid, please go ahead. See, that was my block Sid's question. I'm going to take no.
If your objective, your outcome needs to be action on their part quickly,
Yeah.
then your intensity, of course, is going to be real high.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, okay.
Why is that? Well, this has to do with when we get to map of the world after lunch. If my slowing down speeds you up, guess what I'm going to do?
Yeah.
Slow down. In fact, we use a pattern called, well, I won't get into too much of this, but in a compulsion blowout pattern, we overdo their pattern. So I'll go faster than them. If they're fast, I'll go faster because they never experience anybody who goes faster, and it'll blow out the compulsion, and then they'll slow down. So it's not necessarily always what you're thinking, I think, is right, but in my experience, doing the structure of change work, it depends on their response and what they respond to.
Okay.
And how do you know that? By noticing their response. If I slow down, do you speed up or do you follow my lead? If I speed up, sometimes people will slow down, or they'll speed up to match you. It's that pattern, the pace and lead and rapport. See, it's more than rapport. It's really getting influence in the conversation when you're creating that. The rapport piece is more than rapport. It's influence. Okay, it's really powerful influence. All right, answer your question?
That's great, yeah.
Was it worth waiting for? I'm just kidding. No, it's okay. Yeah. Well, I want you to think about it in a new way, but it doesn't mean your answer is wrong, because what you said actually could absolutely work. But what I wanted to do, hopefully what I did, is give you more choices, because in fact most of the time what you said would work, I think, in most people. However, your best sale or whatever influence might come from the one. So I like to give people more choices. Is kind of my role. And in my own experience, there have been a few just miracles I was able to do. So it looked like it when I mismatched it, not what I thought was the
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Shafiq.
Make sure I understand the exercise correctly. So are we, when we're thinking about our problem that we're sharing, are we
No. Here, so the first one was the problem. Here, all you're doing is coming up with some emotional states to go be more resourceful when you go back to that first person, the original person. So what I wanted you to do is talk about a problem. Now we're going to come up with resourceful states, and I'm going to show you how to access them. Then I'm going to send you back to that person, and now you do it that way, and notice a difference. See? Hopefully, because you didn't do that the first time. I didn't give you a chance to do that. So does that make sense, Shafiq?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So you're just coming up with emotions. Like, ask yourself this. So how can I be more resourceful in that? What do I need? What state do I need to be in to be more resourceful in that, talking about that issue? Do I need to be more calm, more patient? Do I need to be, and run different emotions? Do I need to be, if I'm like this, it's probably too fast. I want to be a little more, maybe examining what I want. What's my outcome? Does this make sense?
as the listener, right?
As either way, just you're going into a communication and you're going to deal with a problem. So just being there in that discussion about the problem and the challenge, what state do you need to be in to be more resourceful there? So I'm keeping it kind of general.
Do we do both problems? My problem?
No, just, I'm sorry, I don't make this too common. Just, there's one problem that you were discussing with somebody. Now we've stepped out and we're going to get resourceful emotions, and we're going to go back into that original partner to be more resourceful with more resourceful emotions.
But
Okay?
aren't all of our states going to be exactly the same? Because
No.
somebody gave us a problem, right? So everyone,
Okay, guys, please listen.
I would
Yes?
think everybody gave us a problem, and we want to help them with that problem. So aren't we all pretty much going to be in a calm, kind,
Could be.
gentle state?
Very good.
You're not going to go back
Yeah.
to them and go, well, your problem, and I'm going to.
Well, like Sid, that may be true. It may be true most of the time, but I would not assume that, and because of what I said to Sid, there are times when maybe something a little different would actually work better. And I want to hold all my options open. So you're right, though. It may be similar because you guys are going in to discuss a challenging situation, which is a great one to have some good resourceful states for, right? We all have it. But this would apply to you're going into a difficult conversation. You're trying to reach that person who isn't responding. There's a misunderstanding with your spouse. What step out? What state? Remember when I started to walk out, I can still picture my board. There was this, flipped out, this big white or wooden thing as a flip out. I stopped at that thing and I went, wait a minute. I got to change states because this is not the best state to be there. That's what I want you to, right? Now you step out and we create a state to go be better there. That's what we're doing now.
Okay.
Sorry if this was a little too complicated, like I didn't describe it right. It's not really that complicated. It's just I want you to have something to really experience this with, and that was that first problem where you met with someone. Okay, so please take another minute, come up with at least one emotional state that you feel certain would make you more resourceful when you go back to that first person and discuss that challenging issue. Okay? That's all you need to do. Okay? Okay. Okay, could I have your attention for just a moment? Okay, guys, thank you. I hope I gave you enough time. Does everybody have an emotional state? Like you could probably name it, like curiosity is one of mine for learning. I just name it curiosity. I don't know what it actually is, who knows, but that's what I call it. Does everybody have a state you feel like, okay, if I'm in this state, I would be a little more resourceful in that situation? Yes? Does anybody not have one? Does anybody confused about you're not sure? Do you want a little feedback? I don't want to go too long here, but are you kind of reasonably certain or maybe even curious? Well, let's see if I'm in that state. Let's see if I'm more resourceful, Everybody okay? All right. Now the question is, so if you think about it, I know this was a little drawn out, but we're doing what top communicators do. We're about to go into an interaction, a communication. But instead of doing what we normally do, like rapport, where we start becoming conscious of things we're not usually conscious of, so we can create an uncommon rapport that is so deep it gives us influence. It's so deep that if you do it enough, you will have astonishing stories. People will become your best friend in the world because you flexed to their map and almost nobody else does. Salespeople have come up to me. Now I'm this guy's best friend. He has no friend. Yeah, it's because he was like this. One guy, he was like this when I did the whole sales presentation. I couldn't believe it. He's an engineer. So I got next to him. One guy in south of Colorado, he said, I did this, and the guy, now I'm his best friend. This kind of stuff, these stories, okay? Well, same thing with what we're doing now. We want to do something different. You go into a communication, especially one that's challenged, or a call that's important, or it hasn't worked out in the past. Stop. So this is the pattern I'm teaching. Stop. State is always the first step, right? It's going to determine how well we do over there. So you know why. Get a state that meets those criteria. It's on your handout, right? You've got one. Now the question is, how do you access the state, right? Because all you have to do is access the state, go into the circumstance. So let me quickly ask you, how do you access emotional states? I've got 3 favorite methods I've been using and teaching for 26 years. And we teach a total of 7, but these are the 3 that just work like magic for people. They're just so easy to do and they're amazing. So, but I'd like to ask, how do you enter an emotional state when you want to go into a good state? You feel good? Do you consciously do it? How do you do it?
I take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. That's a fabulous one. Shafiq, you were waving it?
Yeah, when you actually are remembering to do it, so like things like sales, you know it. So I would have little tricks, and I've shared this before on there. Like back in the past, I would clap my hands before I take a phone call, just to make sure I'm not an analytical, monotone voice, and it just immediately trigger me to know that I got to have an upbeat voice and
That's fabulous. He has like reminders and gestures, like Tony Robbins is big on this, all the anchors. You have a little ritual routine. That's a fabulous one too. That's on our list of 7, but I didn't list this one, but it's on our list of the top 7. I'll just tell you. But it's so great because you get your own little routine and you can write it on a 3x5 cards that you remember. You know, it's terrific. So thank you. These are both really good. Let me go around. There's some great ones. Yes, sir, in the back.
Myself in the mirror.
Oh, that's good too. Yeah, when you have to look at yourself in the mirror, if it puts you in a certain state, great, right?
I talk to myself.
And these are, by the way, notice Shafiq says he's using a thing we call anchors or triggers. And when you do them enough, they just trigger you. I just read a book by Dan Kennedy on time management for entrepreneurs. It's awesome. I read it on the plane out here. I'm going to make a study of it. He's masterful. He said, I have about 20 items in my office that just remind me, like, I'm here to make money and I'm here to be tough. You know, like stuff that triggers him into the states that otherwise you can waste all day doing stuff that's convenient. He's an entrepreneur. You got to get in there and produce and stuff. And I thought, you know, that's just brilliant. He has actual physical things sitting around his space that remind him to go. They're triggers for his emotional state. I thought, that's brilliant. Those are like magic anchors, you know. So that's another one, right? What? Somebody back here? Yes.
Being and feeling prepared, like going into the meeting, like you have like your kind of setup.
Like being prepared, just be prepared. That I absolutely, I have a checklist and a clipboard and I do everything. I was here an hour and a half early. I texted Erica, like I'm all set up an hour and a half early. I just get it done and I can relax because I want to have fun. And if I'm not prepared, so that one I so agree with. Man, I learned that the hard way. I come an hour and a half or extra time to the airport. You just build in extra time and it's just you're abundant with time. It's such a better way to live. It minimizes stress. So A+, I agree with this one too, right?
Your environment. Like I'm in the field a lot, so a lot of times I'm ready to do a sales pitch or whatever, a meeting, or speak to somebody, try to close the deal. I try to go like to the water, by a park somewhere, someplace that just has some beauty to it. So
that's a good one too. Is change your. You guys get in this? Like this one's. Pay attention. Change your physical surroundings. One of the reasons it's just an awesome environment to hold a training. It's kind of easy to relax here, isn't it? We've got a golf course and a beautiful surrounding. It's like, well, it just doesn't get any better to me, you know. And that's thanks to you guys know that one, right? So that's another excellent one. More, and then I want to teach you through my 3 favorites, so you have even more choices, right? More choice, yes.
So sometimes when I know something's coming up and I will just stand. I will change my physical.
Yeah, that one's so good it's on the board. These are all fabulous. Let me give you my 3 favorites. The single number 1 technique I've taught for many years, and it's just astonishing. You know, there's been study on the brain that we literally, in fact, there was a public television special in this about the 3-dimensional brain. It's like we have a 3-dimensional thought hologram that records everything. And when they know this, when they cut open the brain and they stimulate it, a person can re-smell and re-hear everything and relive it with all the senses. And it's like our brain is recording in 3 dimensions everything. Think about it. Every experience you ever had is being recorded. And that's, in a sense, almost proof of that. So one of the most powerful ways you ever change your states is, we call it in NLP, because we're into state management big time, remember a time when. When I want to make a person more resourceful in phone coaching, I'll say, so this feeling of confidence you want when you're meeting new people, I think this is an excellent outcome, Elvis. And so, so I'd like to ask you a question. Would you remember a time when you felt that confidence? And take all the time you need. And just nod. Go ahead and go inside and nod when you remember that time. So I know. And they go like this. And I go, now go to that experience. Now I'm going to associate them. And be there. Look out your eyes and see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt. And when you feel that feeling of confidence, nod so I know. And when they nod, I anchor it. I literally do a physical anchor. And then when I take them into the problem context, and I say, now go into this situation and notice how different it is now that you have this resource. And I trigger the anchor with the exact same cue. And they literally have the new emotion in the old circumstance. I took an executive, and he couldn't socialize to save his life. 2 weeks later, came back and said, I met the mayor. This is in Las Vegas. I met the mayor. He goes, all these people in these rooms, he couldn't work a room. And I just created this relaxed, cool, and I remember a time when you already had it. We call this your personal history in NLP, and each person's is unique. And in NLP, we use the personal history to the max. It's one of the greatest discoveries I think I've ever discovered. Think about it. You've experienced confidence, self-esteem, creativity. You've experienced all these things. So remember a time when, and associate, which means don't see you in a movie over there. That's dissociation. Step in and look out your eyes, be in the movie. So float up and be the you in the movie, so to speak, and look out your eyes and hear and see and feel and be there. And what that does is increase the emotions. You don't have to do the anchoring piece. That's a little more advanced. So remember a time when is phenomenal, okay? Does this make sense? Okay. The other one is, some of you mentioned, like, assume the physiology, like change your posture. Like, if you stand a certain way, like, it's hard to be depressed when you're standing like this. But you ever notice depressed people, they stand a certain way. So emotional states have a matching physiology. So change your physiology, like stand up and do it. Like salespeople often will walk a little bit, stand up and move and go, hey, how's it going? And they have a flow, see? So that's the thing behind this. The other one is called act as if, which is in many ways just pretend. How would you be if you were, what would it be like if you did feel that way? Well, someone will say, well, I don't know, I can't get it. I'll say, I know, but what would it be like if you did? Like just pretend, and like a kid, and it's amazing how you can just pretend yourself into a state. Like, let's just pretend you're in it. And it overlaps a little bit with, eventually they assume the physiology too. So it's 3 simple ways to assume the state. What I want you to do now, you can do this by yourself or with a partner. I want you to access the state that you felt was best, 1 or 2 was best to go handle that problem or that discussion. And when you're in the state, like take just like 30 seconds, access the state, go find that original person, and now be in that state and enter the problem situation, like the discussion, okay? Remember to stay in that state, okay? So I'm going to give you take a minute, or actually as long as you need, take all the time you need in the next 60 seconds to enter that state, okay? It shouldn't take more than that, like you can access it, whatever your favorite method is. Then go to that original person and be there and be in the state and be in the situation, okay? All right, you get ready? Please begin.
And so I am now. So now I'm just going it's going to happen. First it's happening, and now I'm just like, okay, getting what rather than
Okay, could I have your attention for just a second? Did you have enough? Did you guys have enough time to like discuss the problem or challenging situation in this different state? Yes. You guys have? So, what did you notice? What was different when you were in this resourceful state? What'd you notice? Was it?
More positive, more positive.
More positive. Great.
More confidence in talking about my problem and just being recentered into it where I had better perspective.
Confidence, centered, perspective. Awesome. Notice that backtrack I just did? I went bum, 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 the 3 words she used. If I change her words and interpret them, the response will go, yeah, right? Because different people have different meanings to the word, and her nonverbal is, yep, you're right on, right?
Yep.
I've had a little practice. But you see what I'm doing? I'm just unpacking what I'm doing, okay? It's a habit. Do it with everybody. Do it with your kids. Do it with your spouse. People don't give it a well. They don't know, they think they're on the same page. They're not. But if there are just a few things you guys pick up from today, be in a state, the right state before you go communicate. Right? Backtrack. Use your sensory acuity. Create rapport. Okay. There's not that many things here, but they're super powerful. Okay? I know I'm repeating it a lot, but I just want to help you make it easy. Okay? Those are awesome things. That's a different experience. This can be super dramatic. I mean, this can change like almost everything in a negotiation, or being in the resourceful state just gives you access to things you wouldn't have access to in another state, especially if you're in a problem state, right? Man, if you're in an unresourceful state before you go to an important meeting, man, that can be disastrous. And I didn't tell you those stories of the mistakes I made, but I could. I've made those mistakes, And I thought, oh, why didn't I change my state? It's because I was like that in that circumstance because of the state I was in. And if I'd only stopped and said, wait a minute, what's a better state to be in before I talk to my kid or say that, like I did when I stopped, said, I'm going to make her feel like she's not good enough. I don't want to do that. That's not my outcome, right? So very good. Thank you. Yeah, Shafiq?
So I went into the second round with an empathetic state, and it actually made my problem more challenging.
Shafiq is one of the advanced students, so don't try this at home.
It's interesting because you can take an approach of what outcome you want based on a different mindset, right?
Yeah.
And you take a different approach and just change your state. It's interesting to see how it varies your outcome.
You guys think I was joking when I said that? I actually was a little bit, but the truth is, in trainings I teach, and when I teach this, that's what Shafiq's doing. It's exactly what I have him do. Like, do you really, you think you know what emotional states, this is where we take it. You think you know what emotional states are awesome in a situation, but I'm here to tell you, after doing state management for 26 years, you have no clue what emotions might be off the scale. Have you really tested more intense curiosity? Have you, you haven't. You get comfortable in the states you're comfortable in, right? I'm not blaming you in the least, but I'm just complimenting Shafiq. He was experimenting. Well, let me try this. And when it doesn't work, welcome to Thomas Edisonville, right? Every wrong attempt discarded is another step closer, right? That's Thomas Edison, meaning he's experimenting. Well, he didn't get a failure. That's phenomenal feedback. So if you go into that state, here's what happens. So I actually love what Shafiq did. So I was kidding, but really not kidding. So he was kind of experiencing a state. Well, now you have feedback and information. So let me ask you quickly, how would you adjust that? Would you to less empathy or a little bit of empathy more temporarily, or would you mix maybe with the empathy, it was empathy, right? You would mix maybe a couple other emotions, like maybe one being on focus. So you can come back to the outcome. In coaching, we're very empathetic, but then we pace and lead to an outcome. We don't we don't just dwell on the problem, but we want to have compassion for it and understand it. So would you add that, or what might you do that would utilize that feedback? Because it's great feedback. Like how a certain state is in a certain situation. You don't have to answer now. You can. That's maybe one of your great takeaways. But way to go, Shafiq. That's outstanding. Okay. So you want to experiment. The idea is, what's that?
Awesome, Shafiq.
Yeah. You know, see. It's like you want to experiment is the idea, and don't assume that the states you think are done, because then we're sticking to our own model. How do you know a little bit different state might, like many people choose confidence when really confidence, especially like, do you know confidence can kill you? Whenever someone who's been confident, they go, I want to be confident. Where do you want to be confident? Everywhere. And I go, great. Well, you know it can kill you. I say this to them. Did you know that? So if you are taking flight lessons to fly a plane, and you want to be confident, but you don't have any competence in flying a plane, do you want to be confident, or you want to be confident in your ability to learn how to fly a plane? So, right? Like if you get in a plane and you think you can fly when you can't, that's deadly, right? So that usually adjusts their model to, oh, okay, well, maybe I want to be confident over here. And it's okay. So the idea is the states really make a huge difference. So, okay, what else did you notice? Anything else? And then I want to wrap up. We're going to have lunch at noon. And then you guys are going to do some archery? Cool. I'm going to probably prepare our second half. Thank you. But I would love to join you for lunch. And yes.
I was just going to comment on Don's comment earlier, because I was thinking, okay, neutral stages are good maybe to start and then kind of adjust as you go. But I like how she called it kind. There's a kind stage. You're compassionate, you're kind.
And that's why I kind of was trying to address that in answering Shafiq's kind of experiment. Like, he didn't get the outcome he wanted, but it's phenomenal feedback. So, well, how can I use that? So I agree. I think a kind and compassion frame is good for any problem, especially if you're dealing with another person. It's their problem. And that's where those phrases like, well, so let me backtrack. So let me make sure I understand your problem. Is this what you're going through? Is this the situation? And then get their nonverbal response, ideally, in person or over the phone. And then, well, how can I be a resource for you? Or I want to patiently to an outcome. Because dwelling in the problem just can exacerbate the problem. Unless you're in a frame where you're specifically, like Bill Gates has this in his book, he wants the bad news so he can turn it into good news. Well, that's different. It's like you're getting the problem so you can turn it into a set of resources. So that's not the same as just dwelling in the problem. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. So what would you do different? Let me do it this way. To wrap up this module, what's a challenging situation that you're going to go into in the next week or two, where you're going to have to face a difficult situation or deal with somebody and it's difficult, or maybe you've had some struggles with it in the past. And why don't we do this as a group? Tell me the situation. What states do you think would be good? And we can brainstorm a little bit. I'm going to give you some emotional states to go into before you go in to that situation. And we'll literally change the access you have to the resources that you have, right? To how good you can be in that situation, how effective.